Hello, winners, and welcome to Two for the Win with your hosts, Nick and Will. We provide international insight and perspectives on things like leadership and mindset, travel in the travel industry, and sports. And we have our 3 episodes weekly, about 20 to 30 minutes each episode. Monday Mindset, where we talk about leadership and mindset. Wanderlust Wednesday, where we talk about travel in the travel industry. And Fanatic Friday, where we talk about sports. Today is Monday, and so we will be talking about leadership and mindset for Monday Mindset today. Happy Monday Mindset, Nick.
Happy Monday, Will. Hello, winners.
Hello. So make sure you subscribe and share and follow us on the major platforms, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and so on. Spread the word if you're getting some value from these and let others know. We greatly appreciate it, winners. We've had a great first month and looking to build upon it, and it's thanks to you. Please also remember to share feedback, let us know what you like to see us cover, any topic ideas, things of that nature. And lastly, before we jump into today's topic, this episode is sponsored by Dream Vacations by Nick Menard and Associates. So please make sure if you have any upcoming travel things that you like to do, give them a call and the team a call and see if they can't work some magic for you and have a memorable experience. Nick Menard and Associates with Dream Vacations. With that, shall we jump into today's topic?
Let's jump in.
So we wanted to chat today with you, our listeners, our winners, around what we call skill and will. And so a lot of times with folks, when you're leading other people or mentoring other people, there's a challenge, if you will, to determine, is it really skill or is it will that's the bit of the impediment from them, doing better at whatever it is they're doing. So anyway, that would be today's topic, but happy to kick it over to you to chat a little bit about it, Nick, and then we can just free flow the discussion on it.
Absolutely. So as a leader, as we all know, we need to identify first before we jump into solutioning, right? So one of the first things that we need to check is it something that has to do with the mindset? So a problem, an issue was to do with the fact that the belief factor of your associates are actually in the head, or is it something that has to do with training, coaching, or anything like that, which is more skills? But I would like to get it back to you, Will, and can you tell our winners what is for you the difference between will and skill? Maybe we can start with that for those of you who may be wondering.
Sure. So when assessing somebody's performance and giving feedback, I think of skill as, is there something that they're not doing well because they lack either the knowledge, the process in order to implement that thing well, but it's something that can be learned, right? Certainly a lot of times, we're in the customer success industry, right? So one of the things that's really important is making sure people are scheduling the calls with the clients and delivering proactive value. Sometimes people need to develop skills with things like calendar management, prioritization, even knowing how to reverse engineer the numbers, like if they need to have X amount of calls, having so many on the calendar because not everyone's going to show up for the call. So it's something more, I guess, like a tangible skill that people can learn. When it comes to will, you kind of touched on it in the beginning, it's more mindset. Do they have the desire to do it? Are they, quote unquote, going through the motions? And so that's part of the impediment of why they're not as efficient or effective in what they're doing. Basically is their heart into it. And I think sometimes when trying to assess skill versus will, I think it's one of the more challenging things for a leader to do, because in my experience anyway, a lot of times it can be masked. What I mean by that is you may think somebody is lacking skills, and so you're training them, you're giving them different trainings, connecting them with others to learn. But really, what's the impediment is the will. They just don't really like to do what they need to do with that particular thing. Or vice versa. Sometimes people may think, oh, this person doesn't have a good mindset, or they're not a team player, or they're not driven or a go-getter. But really, it's because they lack the skill, and maybe they feel slightly embarrassed about acknowledging they don't have those skills. Maybe they're just unaware that those are the skills they need to hone, and so they're not developing them. But sometimes it can get masked that way. So I think it's definitely a challenge, and I think the key thing to make sure you're doing is asking questions, right? Asking questions so that you can better ascertain is it skill or will, and then adjust your coaching accordingly. But how about you? What are your thoughts?
I love what you just said. I think that usually in the industry we hear, all right, if it's a will issue, there is not much we can do because we cannot want it more than the person. Mm-hmm. But I do believe, though, that we still need to identify where in the will is the issue. Let me explain what I'm meaning by that. Sometimes it's the drive, like they're not driven, or sometimes it's just that they don't have a strong why. Why do you want to do what you're doing? What is your drive to be successful? What's your drive? What do you try to accomplish by doing this? Is it just financially to pay the bills? Or do you have something better or a higher purpose to get things done? Understanding that maybe it's because they don't understand why they're doing what they're doing. So yes, in a world of customer success, they may not think that what they do matter. They may think, well, talking to me or not, it won't change anything. Well, that's our role also as a leader, to help them understand what aspect of the time you spend with clients will be actually beneficial and why. And when they understand that what we do matter, what we do make a huge difference for those C-level executives and the direct report, they may get that drive, and they may understand and know the drive is there. So even though I agree that when the will and skill, the skill is usually something that most leaders are excited about because that's something you can directly impact by doing some coaching, training, best practice, linking peers together to hear from someone who is doing the same job and see what they're doing differently. So we tend to want to work more with the skills. But I do believe that the will, there are ways to impact that as well as a leader. But if the only reason why the will is not there, it's because of the mindset. They don't care. It's just for the paycheck at the end of the month. That's where we are probably running into an issue where it's impossible to want it more than the associate itself.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think, when assessing skill versus will, there's something we use in the organization we frame it as mission of discovery. And it's an ongoing thing. You're always trying to learn more about the person as an individual, being an empathetic leader so that you understand what are their motivators, what are they hoping to aspire to do, how are they looking to professionally develop, what does that mean to them in their career journey, how they project it, 3 to 5 year plan, all that sort of thing. And I think it's critically important because when you're talking about, sometimes they don't realize the importance of their role. And to me, that is an important aspect of leadership, is to paint that picture, right? Is to, if you're given the aspirational objective, and we talked in a previous podcast about tying things to people's nobler motives. Mm-hmm. Like that's part of the expectation setting. Like when you're onboarding a new employee, whether you're self-employed or part of a larger organization, like you want to set clear expectations. Like what are you expecting them to do? This is what success looks like. This is what it doesn't. But then I think it's also important, like we talked in the past, Simon Sinek, start with why. Whatever it is they're doing, this is helping to move the organization forward. If it's an entry-level role, it's a critical job from the standpoint of if you don't have that person doing that thing, somebody else is going to have to do it. And so they could be freeing up other people in other parts of the organization to do those things. So it's still critically important, right? And then of course, if it's a more high-ranking position, whether it's in a self-employed business or not, a company, obviously there's different levels of importance, but tying it into the aspirational, what they do, how it impacts the organization, how it moves the organization forward. And I think it's important. And then and you have to revisit it. You can't just tell them one time, right? Because there's tough days. And sometimes people need that reinvigoration to relight the fire, so to speak, so that it isn't just about collecting a paycheck. Of course, money's important. We all have obligations and things like that. But to your point, if that's the only reason they're doing it, eventually there's going to be a point of diminishing returns. And is that somebody who's really moving the organization forward? Because we know things don't stand still.
Absolutely. And I think you brought up something very interesting about, again, questioning. And I think it's something that we need to work a lot as a leader. Instead of trying to think that we understand the why, it's to ask more questions. And we may realize that during, hopefully not weeks and months, but during the last couple of meetings, we are trying to help in something that it's actually not the problem. By asking more questions, we're going to realize. And when it's the will, maybe the person will be an asset for the organization, but maybe not in the role that they currently are.
Right.
And I think by asking questions, that should have been done during the interview process as well, but that's another story. But when they are there and we ask questions, we realize that maybe in our situation, client success is maybe not where they should be, but they have a very good critical thinking of certain situations. So maybe they may be better to be in a project management kind of role, operation role. So it doesn't mean that the person may not be good for the organization in general. Same if you have a business, but maybe be extremely good for something different. Again, it's better to find that out before the hiring process. But sometimes we don't have all the answers. And sometimes people may go to another direction within the company, and again, by assessing the will and skill, by doing a lot of MOD, mission of discovery, you will be able to figure it out. And something about mission of discovery, it's something that is never ending. So, a lot of time we hear, the first 30, 60 or 90 days is going to be mission of discovery, and it should, but it should never be ending, because the more you have that, the more you establish trust between you guys, the more you understand what's the real reason why your associates are actually doing what they're doing. And it will help you understand the next steps and where actually the issue or the problem may be.
Yeah, 100%. I think, to your point, having that being an ongoing thing is important, because you may have somebody in your organization who is going through a peak or a valley. If they're going through a valley, and historically prior to that, they've always been a really good, if not great performer. If you're doing mission of discovery, there could be something going on in their personal life that's affecting them, right? And then the conversation is, obviously, if you're for a for-profit business, you have to move the business forward. But is it an opportunity for them to maybe take some time off, reset, handle the family stuff, and then come back? For some people, they rather work through it because it's a nice distraction from what might be happening in their personal life. But then they have to make sure they're delivering right, which is tough. But it certainly can be done. We know people can do that. But I think it's important to understand, again, what's going on with them, so that you understand, is it just a point in time thing that may be tough and they have to work through? Or is this something more systemic, like they've soured on the role? They've disconnected with the value of the role. They don't enjoy it. To your point, maybe they are an asset to the organization, but they're not in the right role that fits their skill set and their passion. And that's important. And I think the other thing I wanted to touch on is both you and I spent, I think, a majority of our careers in sales, or sales leadership. And I think when it comes to assessing skill will with sales professionals, it's easy to look at the number, right? Whether it's growth, if it's a growth position, or retention, if it's a retention-based position, or hybrid retention and growth. And I think the thing in terms of assessing will with sellers is, do they have confidence and conviction in what they're selling? Because if it's lukewarm, then those resistance they get from clients, the no's they get from prospects, are going to weigh on them further, and they may start picking apart things like, well, this particular feature of the service or product isn't good enough, or the comp plan, I don't get quite as much that I think I should get from it. They start looking at all the reasons why they're having trouble selling, when really there's people in those organizations that are obviously doing well, right? And it's just about setting aside the stuff that are inhibitors and focusing more on the confidence and conviction. What is great about this product or service? How does it really help the clients or their organizations, be better in the marketplace, be more efficient and effective, more profitable, whatever it is. And if they can't reconnect with that, you've seen it. Like, I know I've seen it, I'm sure you have, where you see people like every year or two, they're with a new organization selling, because they just never really address the root, which is there's something they're doing or not doing that is more the impediment. And a lot of times it's the mindset.
I agree 100%. And a lot of things that we're talking about again, and it's gonna come every episode on Mindset Monday pretty much, but it's culture. Because if the culture is there, people will be more open to share things, and it's less nitpicking and trying to put something out of your associate's mouth. Like, tell me more, what's happening in your life? Are you happy? By the way, that's a question I love to ask. That's something that I think not enough leaders in general are asking, but instead of jumping directly into a conversation, like a business conversation, let's do like we do when we have client conversation. First is building rapport. It's not different with what we do, and that's what part of mission of discovery. But also, are you happy in what you're doing? Like, is there anything that you want to share, or is there anything that I can do to help get you to the happiness that you want to be? At the end of the day, an organization, we are result driven. So
Right.
So we need to make stuff happen. But sometimes by just reflecting, pause, take a step back, like I mentioned last week, it's important in order to actually get something that may be very helpful for us or coaching, or for understand what's next. And the culture, if the team trusts each other, or the organization or the region, wherever you are, trust each other, you will be able to get information also from others. Because sometimes people are not, you don't have all extroverts, you have some introverts. But if the culture is there, they will be more open to talk, and then you will get a lot more information from the person or from the group or from the team, because people want to help each other. And if they know something, they will share that, so we can help them even more. So culture is key, like every topic we're gonna share. But I love your analogy about sales. It's true, and you see that on LinkedIn. People are moving companies every year, and you see like, oh, another sales role, another sales role. Mm-hmm. Well, they try to find the position that they will stay for a long time, but they don't realize that it's in their head. And until they change that, they will be moving indefinitely. So yeah. That's definitely something. The last point that I want to bring, and it's really not something I want to dig deeper today, because I think during one of our future Mindset Monday, we're going to talk more about it, but it's the ladder of accountability. Oh, yeah. Because when we have will versus skills, you can have those information based on answers of your associates. If an associate is always in denial, always having the victim mentality, you will understand that it's a will, most probably, unless it's a skill, but they don't want to admit it. And based on questioning, with a question that we're gonna be able to ask, you will understand if it's a will or skill. But usually when someone is a victim, it's usually a mindset issue. But again, I'm sure we're gonna have a full
Probably
episode
several.
on this,
Yeah.
on that. But that's something that came to my mind as well on that topic.
Yeah, 100%. You know how I feel about that. And yeah, we'll definitely have a dedicated episode on that one. I think the other thing you mentioned earlier, you referenced culture. Something that we've been doing in the group that I'm a part of a lot lately, and I've had some great leaders who are really diving into this deeper, is psychological safety. So like if people are knowing they're not going to get browbeaten, so to speak, if they make a mistake, if they understand that this is an open environment, that it's actually weird if you don't ask questions versus asking questions, not worried about, is it going to be perceived as a silly question? That's irrelevant. You know, the fact of the matter is, you have a question, obviously, you know, take some onus and try to figure out the answer on yourself, but don't hesitate to reach out to others to get help and move forward. And I think that's an important point. And I think the other thing, like circling back on like skill and will and kind of tying in the mindset. So I'll share a personal example. When I first started at the organization I'm with now, 11 years ago, I was hired for a role that I knew nothing really about in terms of the subject matter. I knew the crux of the role, but I didn't know much about the subject matter. And I had come from an industry where I had spent 10 years and felt like I had a certain level of expertise. And now I was getting comfortable being uncomfortable, trying something different. Just figured, okay, why not? I got reached out through LinkedIn and decided to give it a try. Anyway, long story short, I came out of the training and we were assigned a mentor. And I had a phone conversation with my mentor. Wasn't in the same office that I was at. This person was located somewhere else. And about 15 minutes into the call, he's like, "Oh, you got this. You don't need anything else from me." And kind of ended the call. And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And I'm usually more of a heads down person. I'm not necessarily very extroverted. I've learned to be extroverted in the roles that I've had, but inherently I'm more introverted. I think a lot and different things like that. Anyway, what I did is I found 5 people who were considered like extremely top performers at what they did, and I just reached out to them and said, "Hey, can I shadow you for a bit so I can learn?" And I did, and that made a huge difference. And actually at one point I started having a little bit of imposter syndrome. I'm like, they asked such good questions. And even though I came from sales and this role wasn't a sales role, I was like, I never was that good at question asking. But, obviously you can learn that, right? That's a skill. I had the desire. But I think if somebody would have looked and assessed me, say 3 weeks, 4 weeks into the role, they would have been like, uh-oh, what's wrong with Will? Mm-hmm. When really it was a skill. But I took the onus upon myself to like, all right, I'm not going to just sit back and have something done to me. There's people who are doing well at this job. What are they doing? What can I replicate? If I replicate it, I should do very similar in performance. And it made a world of difference.
Love it. Thank you for sharing your personal story here. I'm not gonna overwhelm our winners about sharing mine, but it's literally almost similar. So no surprise there. But I think the main thing based on everything you just said is that you took upon yourself, you took the initiative to reach out. And I think that's something I wish every single associate in every organizations would do instead of wait and hope to get the information. A rule of thumb for me, it's when you start anywhere in any kind of role, you don't need to wait for a mentor. You don't need to wait for your manager. You don't need to wait for anything. Ask who is performing at the level that you find excellent. Reach out. Put 30 minutes in that person's calendar. What are you doing? Whatever you're doing works. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I want to follow what works. And when I get there, that's where I can start tweaking my own personal little idea and see the results are based on that. And that's when you can start teaching others, because you went there, you got there by using a system that's performing already, and then you tweak it to make it even better. But that's what I love having mentors and all of that. But by yourself, you can accomplish so much by just listening and by just asking.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that the point for this episode was really like ask a lot of questions. Ask a lot of questions. You will never get an answer that, or even if you get a wrong answer, you will have so many questions that you will have something from those answers. So ask.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, because sometimes learning what to do could be through asking questions and observing somebody and replicating it. Sometimes it's asking questions and observing things. You're like, oh no, this is not going to work, and you do something different. So you actually do better by learning what not to do versus to do. But to your point, you have to interact with people. You have to seek those who have the expertise. And if you can't get with somebody with the expertise, I'm going to give you kind of a controversial thing. Find out who the low performers are and find out how they're doing, and then just do the opposite. So that's the other way you can go about it. But I think, for leaders, and we'll touch more on this as we go, because this is, in my opinion, one of the more tougher things of a leader to do is to accurately assess skill versus will. And there's things on the skill side we didn't touch on in this episode. We certainly could. On the will side, I think the one last thing I would say on it, to kind of close it up, is if you do determine that somebody has a will issue, and I would just encourage you, don't let that perpetuate and last a very long time. Because I've had situations where, when I first got into leadership, I like harmony. I like people to have fun, work hard, play hard, that type of mentality. And sometimes I resisted saying what needed to be said or expediting things. And one of the areas I think I've really grown as a leader is addressing the elephant in the room. And when I have questioning and I get to a point where I'm like, this really does seem like a will issue, I've had conversations with people and said, you probably wake up every day and you don't feel great about going to work. Life is too short to go through that experience. Why don't we have a conversation about, let's get to a resolution and some next steps. And I've had that, and the first time I really had that discussion, the person ended up resigning, and 6 months later they reached out via LinkedIn and said, I am so glad you had that conversation, because they were now doing something different, something totally different than what they were doing for the organization we're part with, and they were so much happier. And that's what it's all about, right? It's not just being punitive because, they're not performing. It's about helping somebody get on the right path, and sometimes they need that nudge because they're afraid to do it on their own. But we had that conversation, they did it, and now they're happier. And I dwell on that all the time whenever I have to have a tough conversation with somebody when it gets to that point when it's a real will issue. I remember situations like that. It won't always be the case with people, but it happens enough that it makes it worthwhile and gives you that added courage to say what needs to be said.
Well said, Will. Yeah, again, as a leader, you want the best for your associates. And usually it's the best for the organization as well, but sometimes the best is something different.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, winners. Thank you, listeners. Hope you enjoyed today's discussion. We'll continue to build on that and bring in ladder of accountability and things of that nature. So please remember to subscribe, share, and follow us on all the major platforms. Again, any feedback, please let us know. Always love to hear from you, but hope you got some nuggets from today's discussion. So thank you, winners. We'll chat again soon.
Thank you, winners. Bye-bye.
Take care.